We are in Revelation chapter 18. We've looked at this prostitute last week, and that her identity is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. At that time, that would have been Rome, and it's using Babylon as code for Rome. So it, at one time, applied to Babylon. So who does it apply to today? I think that we can make that application. She's supported by the waters, the people that she rules over. She was supported by the beast, the current governing authority. She was supported by 10 horns, kings with limited authority. But all these come together to destroy her. All three of these entities, the people she rules over, the kings, the powerful kings and the not so powerful kings, all rebel, and she ends up in a heap of ruin. And so in chapter 18, we move on from there, and we'll read verses 1 through 3. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority. And the earth was made bright with his glory, and he called out with a mighty voice, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, a haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean, detestable beast. For all nations have drunk the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality, and the kings of the earth have committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth have grown rich from the power of her luxurious living." That's quite an epitaph, right? So the message comes from where? An angel from heaven, comes out of heaven. He has what? Great authority, power, great authority. And he comes out of heaven, and what happens to the earth? It's made bright. So this angel, the earth is illuminated by his glory. So this angel has close association with God. Every time Moses was in the tent with God, when he came out, his face shone brightly, and it was weird for the people, so he put a veil over. So this is the same situation. This angel is closely associated with God. He's got God's glory on him, and he comes down to earth, and the earth is just lighted up because this angel has been close to God. He came directly from God without delay. So this message is urgent and quickly delivered. As we already talked about, Babylon's identity, code name for Rome in the context of John's time. I think there's a code name for any government that sets itself up against God. Any government in any time in history that sets itself up against God is Babylon, is Rome. The result of her demise, she is desolate, right? Empty. What goes there? Where she was. Only witches, demons, she's haunted. I mean, we've seen this last in chapter 17, right? Everybody's standing back away from her. All the people who made her rich are now standing back. They're not willing to help. She's alone. No one's coming to her aid. The nations shared in drinking her wine of her adulteries. The kings of the earth envied her riches. They committed adultery with her, and they wanted to share in her wealth, but now they don't want to be anywhere near her because she's fallen. Fallen is Babylon the Great.
Is this the same angel that's referred to the same exact language? Chapter 14, verse 8, where it says, fallen is Babylon the Great. She who made all the nations drink of the wine of passion.
Whether it's exactly the same angel or not, we're not given that. It's just an angel out of heaven. So, it's not named. Could be. I know God's got more than one angel.
Well, it refers to the messages of the three angels, so I'm just kind of assuming.
Okay, yeah. That's a detail I don't find much. Didn't do much with. Okay, so what are the adulteries of Babylon, of this lady? What are her adulteries? Worldly wealth and pleasures of sin are her top priorities. I mean, she wants wealth, she wants pleasure. She has her wealth at the expense of her concern for the people who supplied the wealth. She traded by manipulation and greed. Bless you. She was ruthless, proud, ungodly, and full of idolatry. Maddening wine. This is maddening wine. What happens to people who indulge in this maddening wine? They become mad. Yeah. Everyone who indulges in this lifestyle. What happens to somebody who indulges in a sinful lifestyle? They're ruled by it, right? They are imprisoned by the lifestyle to their own detriment. It looks exciting, it looks beautiful, but it's prison. And it's your own detriment.
That reminds me of the mantra of the 60s. Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yep. Yeah, I was too young. Yeah. I was born in 66, so it's pretty much over by the time the 70s came. Anyway.
It really applies, we generally talk about Babylon, but it says here for all nations have drunk it, it's just a mirror of society.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep, all nations have drunk the wine, the maddening wine of her idolatries. Okay, let's read verses 4 through 8. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins, lest you share in her plagues, for her sins are heaped high as heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup she mixed. As she glorified herself and lived in luxury, so give her a like measure of torment and mourning. Since in her heart she says, I sit as queen. I'm no widow, and mourning I shall never see. For this reason, her plagues will come in a single day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be burned up with fire, for mighty is the Lord who has judged her." So what are the Christians to do? Get out of Dodge. Or in this case, Babylon. Yep. Was Dodge City like Babylon? Probably. Uh, uh, so Frank was there. In John's day, Babylon was Rome. In Daniel's day, it was Babylon. What is a Babylon of our generation? I'll let you judge that. So where were they called to literally leave those cities? Babylon, Rome. I think in most cases, no, they weren't literally called to leave. But I think in case of Jerusalem, yes. I mean, because you knew when Jerusalem was going to fall. But you don't know the time or date of any other nation's fall. So what is he saying? Don't participate in what she's doing. I mean, wherever there's people, you're going to have sin, right? Unfortunate, but true. So God's not calling us to live as monks, because then we have a group of sinning monks. We're called to mentally, emotionally, and spiritually leave those cities. Do not share in their sins. Do not share in their pleasures. Do not love what they love. Do not defend their evil lifestyles.
See, I've got a little note that I wrote in my Bible that says, it reminds you of Psalm 1.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. It's not we're called to get out of Dodge.
Yes.
Don't sit with them, stand with them.
Right. Right.
Don't hang out with don't indulge.
I was just thinking about Lot and the city of Sodom. And now he was there and he may not struggle to participate, and he didn't, the angels didn't get him out of there, but he was mingling with them and his wife took him back. I mean, they were too close.
Right. Yep. There's plenty of examples of that. But wherever we go, we need to know that we're going to deal with sinful people and that we need to not give in to their pleasures, give in to their focus. What's their focus is, well, we're going to die and it's going to be all over in a few years anyway, so we might as well enjoy it and live in a way that, isn't good. So, and I believe that for the most part, this is figurative language using Jerusalem's fall to Rome as an example. I mean, when Jerusalem fell, they had time to leave because they knew when the army surrounded it, we got to get going. I suppose when you could see Rome fall, but you need to be not part of the Rome aura anyway, whether you lived there or not when it fell. So that's my take on that. Take it or leave it. Those,
This is a compelling continual message, in the New Testament, you got diarrhea, you got Laodicea,
Right.
Because I think it's talking about not only individuals, but the church aligning with that.
Right. And that's a good example. Corinth, one of the most prostitute-like cities in Rome. Paul didn't tell them to leave Corinth. Paul told the church to separate themselves spiritually from that situation. The man living with his mother, his father's wife, so it's not his mother, but having his relationship with his father's wife. And the church is not upset about this. So that's a good example. Yeah. Don't leave Corinth, but don't live in Corinth either.
You've mentioned several times, and in Revelation, the Christians were basically living in heaven, obviously on earth.
Yes.
And so you don't physically here,
Spiritually we're in heaven. Correct. So what does directly out of the verses? Why should we separate ourselves from Babylon? Because Babylon's sins are piled up all the way to heaven. God remembers their sins because, well, how could he forget them? The stench is affecting even his nostrils. So give back to Babylon, give back to her as she is given, pay her back double for what she has done, pay out for her a double portion of her own evil. Those who lead others astray, abuse them, use people solely for their own pleasures and wealth, and those who have filled up the full measure of their disobedience to God will face the full extent of God's wrath. There's no free lunch for consuming the people of God that God has made in his own image and put on earth to do good to each other and to learn the ways of God, but are deceived by their pleasures and depravity of sin that the prostitute offers as desirable and good. She sought glory and luxury, not through service, but through deception. So she will endure just as much torment and grief in return. So this prostitute is deceived, right? She thinks what?
She's in a good spot. She thinks.
Yeah, what? I'm living in luxury, she thinks. I sit as a queen. I'm no widow, and I'll never see mourning because I don't care about the people that are around me that I'm devastating. I'm not gonna mourn.
Morning in life is spelled M-O-U-R.
Yes, yes, we're not going to mourn for their loss or for anything. I'm not going to mourn. Yep.
Says I will never see that.
Yeah, I will never see mourning. I'm not going to mourn. I got nothing to mourn about. I'm a queen. I got everything going my way until it's not. So she's deceived. She thinks her luxury will never end. She is drunk with her pleasures and she doesn't see the end coming. So when I was a kid, the greatest baseball player of all time was Pete Rose. And he, was not a tall man. He's not a fast man, but he was called Charlie Hustle. Why? Because when he hit the ball, he could run it out to first base. He ran with all he had. Yeah, even when he got walked, he ran to first base. He gave it all he had. So run like Charlie Hustle, run like Pete Rose to get out of Dodge. Don't hang around. Don't think, this is comfortable here. Okay. Any more comments before we go to verses 9 through 19?
You can't help but remember Jesus saying, what you sow, that's what you'll reap.
Yes, what you sow, that shall you also reap.
I'm reminded in my notes here that Revelation chapter 3, verse 17, for you say, I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing, not realizing that you are wretched, widows, poor, blind, and naked.
Which city was that?
Well,
Well, that particular one.
Church of Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. Anyway, okay, so we've seen her damage. Now let's see what the collateral damage is.
I'm not changing my comment from
Oh,
Paul.
okay.
I don't know.
I didn't catch who you said. So Jesus. Okay.
He might have said it.
Well, if Paul said it, Jesus must have. No. Anyway, so Jesus said it. So let's go on to read verses 9 through 19. We'll we'll go move on. And the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality and lived in luxury with her will weep and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning. They will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, alas, alas, the great city, you mighty city, Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. Okay, I got to stop there for a second. So I made a reference to this being what I'm talking about, reading about now was in chapter 17. When you're studying ahead, you get all these things out of order. So here we are talking about what we're going to see three groups here talking about this prostitute and what happened to her. So we just read about all the kings of the earth who committed sexual immorality with her. Verse 11, and the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented wood, all kinds of articles of ivory, all kinds of articles of costly wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon, spice, incense, myrrh, frankincense, wine, oil, fine flour, wheat, cattle, and sheep, horses and chariots and slaves, that is, human souls. The fruit for which your soul longed has gone from you, and all your delicacies and your splendors are lost to you, never to be found again. The merchant of these wares who gained wealth from her will stand far off, in fear of her torment, weeping and mourning aloud. Alas, alas, for the great city was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels, and with pearls, for in a single hour all this wealth has been laid waste. And all the shipmasters and seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea stood far off and cried out as they saw the smoke of her burning. What city was like that, the great city? In verse 19 yet. And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, crying out, alas, alas, for the great city where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth, for in a single hour she has been laid waste.
So there's an implication in verses 11 through 14 that all those things were evil because they couldn't sell them anymore because the city wasn't buying them. And that's what made them wealthy.
Well, the things weren't evil. The things weren't evil.
I understand that, but if you can interpret that those are all the things that make you evil by being selfish and desirous and all that sort of stuff. So we shouldn't eat cinnamon,
Well, that would be a very inconvenient way of interpreting scripture. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they sure do. Yeah, no. Right, instead of the love of money, yeah. Oh, yeah, so, yeah. That would be a very inconvenient way of interpreting scripture because I like cinnamon. So, yeah, I don't, because I like cinnamon, I'm not going to go with that interpretation.
You just leave those verses out of your mind.
That's right. So,
Well, the merchants were weeping and mourning because they weren't making money from these things
right, yes,
that were being given to.
yes. But Bob's quite right. There's some silly interpretations out there people make on much more obvious things than this. Let me tell you. Not today. So collateral damage of Babylon's fall. We see here Babylon, the prostitute, has been brought to ruin. And see what her friends do. The first group are the kings of the earth. And what do? They stand back. And they weep and mourn. Yep. They committed adultery with her and enjoyed her luxury. But now they're standing afar off. They cry over her and mourn. Do they really care for her? No. It's selfish. They care what they've lost. They couldn't care less about her. They're going to go find another prostitute in a minute. They no longer have that particular prostitute to commit adultery with. They have lost their source of their luxury that they were living in. So what's the second group? Yeah, yeah. Right. So she's a symbol. So maybe they did somewhat mourn for her, but okay. No problem. Yeah. I thought I heard something else over here. Nothing. Okay. Yeah, they're mourning for their. Well, they lost their relationship with her. So there is something about her that is they're mourning. So what's the second group? The merchants of the earth. And what do? They mourned, but where do they mourn? Far off. They're keeping away too. She has made them rich by buying all their products. She used them for her trade in luxury, adultery, and prostitution. You can go to Ezekiel 27 and see the same similar kind of wording in regards to Tyre. They don't care so much about the prostitute. Maybe there is some of it there, but they're in love with the wealth they received from her. And now they're losing their source of wealth. They're mourning for themselves primarily. I lost my source of wealth. What am I going to do now? Where's my money coming from? How am I going to live in luxury when I lost my customer? And then the third group. So we've got kings, we've got merchants of the earth, and now we've got merchants of the sea. And they sold their wares to her. They would go all over this earth and collect things and sell them to her. And now they have lost their customer. And where do they stand? Far off. They mourn the loss of their source of wealth. She bought their stuff, and there she cannot buy them anymore. So, do we learn here something about the wealth of sin? You lose it, and guess where your friends go? They're gone, because your friends were just in it for the fun. They didn't really care about you. They didn't really love you. They just were in it for the fun. Like the prodigal son. Yep.
When people win the lottery, they get a whole bunch of really
Friends.
families.
Yeah.
The money goes out.
Yeah.
they're all gone.
People that know how to spend their money, because it's not their own. Yep, and then they end up without any of it. Okay, so let's go on to verses 20 through 24. Yes, we will actually finish a chapter in one day. So rejoice over her, O heaven, and you saints and apostles and prophets, for God has given judgment for you against her. Then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone. You know, like for you and me in the 21st century, that was a big, big stone. And threw it into the sea, saying, so will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence, and will be found no more. And the sound of harpists and musicians, of flute players and trumpeters will be heard in you no more. And a craftsman of any craft will be found in you no more. And the sound of the mill will be heard in you no more. And the light of a lamp will shine in you no more. And the voice of bridegroom and bride will be heard in you no more. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, and all nations were deceived by your sorcery. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who have been slain on the earth. So we're looking at the autopsy of Babylon. What is in verse 18 and verse 20? We've seen from 9 through 19 all of this, the mourning of people who were her friend because their wealth came from her and she's gone. And now we see in verse 20 the word rejoice. When the prostitute Babylon falls, the heavens rejoice. The people of God rejoice. The apostles and prophets rejoice. They are commanded to rejoice. When God gives you a victory, it's time to celebrate. It's not, oh, I didn't do it. It was all God. Celebrate. God gave you a victory. That's something we don't do very well. It's something we need to do better. Celebrate. God gave you a victory. And then we have an object lesson. A mighty angel does what? Picks up a boulder the size of a large millstone, tosses it into the sea. And the angel says, with such violence, the great city of Babylon is thrown down. It will never be found again. Now, here's what I love about people's interpretation of Revelation. It will never be found again. There is no Babylon anymore. Do we know where Babylon was? Well, yeah.
We also know where Rome is.
We also know where Rome is. So we also know where. We wish we didn't know. But Syria, Tyre, we know where these places were. That God said, you'll never be anymore. We know where they were. So what's he saying? It was not that they would disappear from the earth and we would never know where they were, or that no people would live there anymore. People still live where Babylon was, right? People still live where Rome was. But Rome still is. What's the point? It's not that they would not exist at all. They would never be a rolling city again. Egypt has never been a rolling country again. Rome has never been a rolling city again. Tyre has never been a rolling city again. Babylon has never been a rolling city again. British Empire. So that's what it's saying. They will never be rolling cities again. Many still exist, but have never returned to prominence. And I think we can say confidently, they never will. Sorry?
People might argue with you that Rome is not a ruling place.
because of the, yeah, Catholic, yeah. Okay, yeah. Vatican. Good point. But I think we're talking of, well, are they really a religious organization? Anyway, since a prostitute is certain to fall in whatever age she exists, should we not take seriously the warning to distance ourselves from her? We know her time is limited, and we don't want to be caught watching her downfall from afar, wishing we could still have participate in her fornication. Instead, we want to be among those who recognized it was coming, separated ourselves spiritually, and rejoiced in the salvation we gain when her inevitable demise occurs. The primary purpose of the book of Revelation is to bring about heart change. Period. Will you transform your heart to belong to the Lord, not to Babylon? Will you flee Babylon and her decadent prostitution and run toward Jesus and his righteousness? That is what the book is about, giving us a motivation to leave everything associated with Babylon and run towards whatever belongs to the Lord. Any comments before we close in prayer?
Derek, I found the whole example here to be counterintuitive to the because everything you read here is no different. Centuries ago than what it is today, and well, basically what controls man and society. And really it's what's controlling the church today, because looking where the church grows and prospers is certainly not its limitations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because materialism overtakes and consumes it.
Right.
And I know each day I have to fight even with possessions controlling you.
Mhm.
You've got to take care of.
Yeah, that's when I first had a car and the maintenance that I had to go through. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is supposed to be a benefit to me, not my prison. Yes, it's counterintuitive to the way humans think. We want wealth. It should be good, and it oftentimes you have to fight against the desire for more things, more cinnamon. Let's go to God.